pushing and shoving and flashing and getting mad. That's all. That's the last dream. But before,
Dance.
no, I
How
mean...
How can you put down somebody that loves you, man?
You know what? I was mad at the time as they would not. I mean, they...
What happens when two iconic women from opposite worlds meet on one of the most famous talk shows of all time? This is the unforgettable moment when Janis Joplin met Raquel Welch on the Dick Cavett Show in 1970. This TV moment is pure gold. Who was Janis Joplin?
All that I did. But I know she left here. Door, just looking out at the rain. I know to love you and give you the world. Then you find, honey, you but miss you. But to me, honey, I'll do what.
Janis Joplin was one of rock music's most electrifying and unforgettable figures. A woman whose powerful, bluesy voice and unrestrained performance style left an indelible mark on music history. But her journey to stardom wasn't immediate. Born on January the 19th, 1943 in Port Arthur, Texas, Joplin's love for music developed early on. But it wasn't until she joined the San Francisco-based band Big Brother and the Holding Company in 1966 that her career truly took off. In 1968, the band's album Cheap Thrills became a massive success, earning widespread praise, especially for Joplin's raw and emotional vocals. Songs like Piece of My Heart and Ball and Chain solidified her place as a rock sensation. However, despite the band's rising fame, Joplin felt held back by her bandmates. Tension between her and Big Brother grew, ultimately leading her to leave the group and pursue a solo career in late 1968. Her first solo album, I Got Dem Ol' Cosmic Blues Again Mama, 1969, received mixed reviews. As critics struggled to reconcile Joplin's unpolished, blues-driven voice with more polished expectations of a female rock star. Yet her second solo album, Pearl, 1971, released posthumously after her tragic death, was an enormous hit. Songs like Me and Bobby McGee and Mercedes-Benz showcased her incredible range and cemented her legacy.
Some place those cats always wandered off to. I never figured out exactly where it was. They always going somewhere, man. Well, it's like a ball and in a chain. What's it worth all the time that you spend? Now that same many things you will do. I just heard.
Sadly, Joplin died on October the 4th, 1970, from an accidental heroin overdose, joining the infamous 27 Club alongside other iconic musicians who passed away at the same age. Early life. Born to a conservative family in the small town of Port Arthur, Texas, Janis wasn't exactly set up for a life of rebellion and rock and roll. But from a young age, she felt different, often out of place among her peers. Music became her escape. She started singing in her church choir, displayed talent early on, but her true self started to emerge in her teenage years. At Thomas Jefferson High School, Joplin began rebelling against the typical 1950s ideals for young women. While other girls conformed to the fashionable dresses and coiffed hairstyles, Janis embraced a more androgynous look, favoring men's shirts, short skirts, and sometimes tights. She wasn't trying to fit in, and that was the point. Her uniqueness and refusal to conform led to bullying, but she soon found a group of guy friends who, like her, didn't fit into the traditional mold. Together, they bonded over their love for music, poetry, and the Beat Generation, a literary movement that rejected mainstream culture and embraced raw, creative expression. Early musical interests.
And I've been looking ever since, too. But sitting down by my window, you know she tell you.
Music played a huge role in shaping who Janis would become. Growing up, she gravitated toward the blues, a genre known for its emotional depth and intensity. She was heavily influenced by artists like Lead Belly, Bessie Smith, Ma Rainey, and Odetta, powerful voices who conveyed deep sorrow and joy through their music. For Joplin, the blues was not just a genre, it was a form of storytelling that spoke to her in ways no other music could. With her friends, Janis often frequented working-class bars in nearby Vinton, Louisiana, where they would listen to local blues acts. It was in these spaces that Janis honed her ear for the gritty, soulful music that would later shape her career. In 1962, at the age of 19, Joplin left Texas to study art at the University of Texas in Austin. Here, she began performing at folk sings, casual music gatherings on campus, and at a local venue called Threadgills. It didn't take long for her to stand out with her powerful, gut-wrenching singing style, a far cry from the gentle sounds of folk icons like Joan Baez and Judy Collins. Janis was something else entirely, a force of nature who could command a room with just her voice. Early struggles in San Francisco and New York. In January 1963, Janis made her first attempt to break into the music scene on a larger scale. Along with her friend Chet Helms, she headed to San Francisco, where the burgeoning music scene seemed like the perfect fit for her talents. However, it wasn't her time yet. Struggling to make a name for herself, Janis found herself trapped in a cycle of heavy drinking and drug use. Her dream of becoming a professional singer faded as her personal struggles intensified. After her time in San Francisco, Janis moved to New York City in 1965, hoping for better luck. But New York only worsened her issues. Her addiction to alcohol and amphetamines spiraled out of control, and her career prospects looked bleak. Disillusioned and exhausted, Joplin returned home to Texas in 1965 to regroup and get clean. For a while, she stepped back from the music scene, presenting herself as more conservative, with neat hair and tidy clothes. But Janis could only suppress her true self for so long. Music was calling her back. Joining Big Brother and the holding company. By 1966, Janis was ready to dive back into her passion. At the recommendation of a friend, she auditioned for Big Brother and the Holding Company, a San Francisco-based psychedelic rock band that was looking for a new lead vocalist. The band members were immediately blown away by her powerful voice and fiery energy. It didn't take long for Janis to become the standout performer of the group. Big Brother and the Holding Company quickly gained a following, particularly after their breakout performance at the 1967 Monterey Pop Festival. Their rendition of Ball and Chain captivated the audience, and much of the praise focused on Janis's electrifying vocals. However, as Joplin's star rose, tensions within the band grew. Her increasing fame began to outshine her bandmates, leading to frustration on both sides. Despite the success of Cheap Thrills in 1968, Janis felt it was time to move on. She wanted to explore new creative directions that she believed were not possible with Big Brother. In December 1968, Janis performed her final show with the band. Solo career and tragic end. After leaving Big Brother, Janis embarked on a solo career that showcased her full potential as an artist. Her first solo album, I Got Dem Old Cosmic Blues Again Mama, was released in 1969. While it received mixed reviews, it demonstrated Janis's willingness to experiment with different styles and push her musical boundaries. Unfortunately, her struggles with addiction persisted throughout her career. Her personal battles with alcohol and heroin cast a shadow over her success. Just as she was beginning to record her most iconic album, Pearl, Janis's life was tragically cut short. She died from an accidental heroin overdose on October the 4th, 1970, at just 27 years old. Despite her untimely death, Janis Joplin's music continues to inspire generations of fans and musicians alike. She remains a symbol of raw emotion, unbridled creativity, and a relentless spirit that transcended the boundaries of rock and roll. Raquel Welch.
Know them all by this time. I remember being on one show. Oh, I can't repeat
I wrote that for Jack Parr years ago. He wanted an
well,
introduction
Johnny's
for
using it now.
a famous...
A stunningly beautiful woman, Raquel Welch was also widely regarded as a sex symbol for her entire career. Her final role was in the single-season 2017 series Date My Dad, in which she starred as the main character's mother-in-law, Rosa. A Hollywood starlet doesn't become a legend from only her looks, however. Welch was an agent of change who said she had longed to be taken seriously for her iconic role as Loanna in 1,000,000 Years B.C. Onward.
How about a long dress instead of just a short dress? That would be really marvelous.
That's very pretty.
So they made it long for me.
Did you hear the introduction I made of you?
She said she was shocked to become a sex symbol and a pinup model, but she nevertheless championed women's liberation and the sexual revolution, all while changing beauty standards in America throughout the 1960s and 1970s in a post-Marilyn Monroe era. To younger generations, she was probably most recognizable as the pampered ex-wife and mother to Linda Cardellini's Chutney in the trial at the end of Legally Blonde. To Gen X, she is most definitely remembered as the pinup girl in Andy Dufresne's Tim Robbins' jail cell the night he escaped Shawshank Prison. But to the men and women of the 1960s and 1970s, Welch was a star. Let's look at her life and career and celebrate her journey from beauty queen to Hollywood icon. Her father was Bolivian. Raquel Welch was born in 1940 in Chicago. Her mother was a Midwestern woman of English descent, and her father was an aeronautical engineer from Bolivia who emigrated to the U.S. during the Great Depression. The family moved to Southern California a few years later, and that's where young Raquel, full name Jo Raquel Tejada, was raised. Though she kept the surname of her first husband for professional use, successfully avoiding stereotypical typecasting for Latinas, she was quoted as saying, "The essence of who I am is Latina." Evidence of that can be found in the simplest of sources, her name. As a child and again as a young woman looking to break into show business, Welch was passionate about her first name and insisted she be called Raquel, despite numerous attempts to anglicize her identity. Her name and her stunning good looks, so far removed from the blonde-haired, blue-eyed beauties often held up as the Hollywood ideal, gave her what was referenced to as an exotic air, a destination both limiting and broad, that led to her many roles in American westerns and the booming cinema Italiano industry of the 1960s and 1970s. She never lost sight of who she was, though, and in 2001 received the Imagine Lifetime Achievement Award for her positive portrayals of the Latino community and expanded the number of Latina roles she took in the 21st century. She had a long and winding road to Hollywood. A frequent beauty queen in her teen years, Raquel Welch got a job in a profession that frequently favored good looks in those days, a TV weather person, while she studied drama at San Diego State University. But she soon left school when it was too hard to balance her studies against work and her life as a new wife and mother. She and high school sweetheart James Welch married in 1959. Then they had children, Damone and Tahini Welch, born 1959 and 1961 respectively. Following the demise of her first marriage, Welch moved to Dallas and struggled to get by while modeling and waitressing. Her plan was to move to New York to pursue a life on the stage, but she insisted moving back to California and settling in the Los Angeles area. She started auditioning and was named a Deb star in the early 1960s as an up-and-coming actress to watch. Her manager and future husband, Patrick Curtis, worked with her to build Welch as a sex symbol. The juxtaposition of this image against her real life was not lost on Welch, who wrote in her autobiography, "The irony of it all is that even though people thought of me as a sex symbol, in reality I was a single mother of 2 small children." She had a breakout role in Fantastic Voyage. In 1966, Raquel Welch got her big break starring in Fantastic Voyage, a science fiction film about a team of scientists who board a submarine and are miniaturized in order to be injected into the body of a dying man so they can save him. It earned $12 million at the box office and received good reviews from critics. The film launched Raquel Welch immediately to stardom. "A woman has no place on a mission of this kind," Colonel Donald Reed, Arthur O'Connell, says in the film, and the film's advertising even refers to Welch as a beautiful girl, rather than a grown woman and mission technician. While the movie's characters and marketing may have underestimated her, Welch never underestimated herself, and audiences responded. The film became an iconic work of the 1960s sci-fi, and along with Welch's next genre spectacle, 1 Million Years BC, it helped start her career. Unlike her last role, she barely had lines in this one at all, but her face and her body became the defining images of the film, thanks to the publicity poster of her towering on the screen wearing nothing but a doeskin bikini and matching boots, hence the moniker Fuzzy Britches in The Shawshank Redemption. The poster became an instant pin-up favorite around the world, and Welch became known as one of the sexiest women of all time. Welch was conflicted about the label of sex symbol. Sure, it made her a star, but she also wanted to be recognized for her talent and her independence rather than just her looks. She resisted pressure to go nude for films. Raquel Welch came to fame in the era of sexploitation films which, while never mainstream themselves, pushed the nudity and sexuality boundaries in mainstream cinema. Sometimes exploitative, sometimes artful, sometimes grossly gratuitous, nudity was nevertheless becoming more and more common. Welch, however, never went nude in a film. She even refused to go nude when she posed for Playboy in 1979, a decision to which Hugh Hefner replied by calling her boring. She never berated other women who posed or acted in the buff, but Welch refused to do it herself. She always knew who she was and what she was comfortable with, and that gave her a lot of presence and staying power in an industry that often pressures and controls its female stars. She pushed society's boundaries as well as her own. In the 1969 movie 100 Rifles, Welch's character embraces Lidecker, played by former NFL great Jim Brown. Their interracial sex scenes sparked controversy, especially since the film premiered at the end of the 1960s civil rights era, only 2 years after Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. Equally controversial was their turn in the 1970 film Myra Breckinridge, in which she plays the titular character, a transgender woman. She approached the part hoping it would fuel more dramatic roles for her in the future, but the film wasn't received well. Not content to stay just a pretty face in the industry, Welch continued pushing her boundaries. She continued to embrace those alternative stories throughout her career, and in 1987 made great strides again as a mother with amyotrophic lateral sclerosis in the TV movie Right to Die. Her performance was nominated for a Golden Globe. As the 1970s carried on, second-wave feminists fought for more social and workplace equality. Welch's films, particularly 1972's Kansas City Bomber, embodied the kind of female empowerment long missing from American film. But at the same time, Welch conflicted with feminist movements at the time. She said she supported the movement and how it changed attitudes towards sexuality, but she was also dismissed by many feminists at the time due to her status as a sex symbol. She took on MGM and won. In 1981, the John Steinbeck novel Cannery Row was being adapted by MGM with Raquel Welch attached to star. But soon after filming began, Welch was unceremoniously fired and replaced by Deborah Winger. Raquel Welch sued for breach of contract. Welch won $10.8 million, twice as much as the film's ultimate box office returns. The victory had unintended consequences for Welch, however, as she was essentially blacklisted by the industry and was never offered the lead in a major motion picture again. "That's not the outcome I was looking for," she told The Hollywood Reporter. It may not have been the result she hoped for, but it called out the atrocious double standards actresses were being held to. She was a businesswoman and entrepreneur. With Hollywood no longer calling, Raquel Welch turned her attention intermittently to the stage and, more permanently, to the burgeoning new world of personal fitness. Welch released her fitness book, Raquel, the Raquel Welch Total Beauty and Fitness Program, in 1987, along with a VHS program based in Hatha Yoga and the principles of an alcohol-free, non-smoking lifestyle. The program went multi-platinum as women everywhere tried to look like Raquel Welch. The passing and legacy of a legend. Following a brief illness, Raquel Welch died February 15, 2023. But her impact and legacy will live in perpetuity on in film. For over 50 years, Welch used her beauty, her drive, and her gumption to carve a place for herself in Hollywood history. The Dick Cavett Show. After several years and a variety of writing and acting jobs, including appearances on The Ed Sullivan Show and the popular quiz show What's My Line, Cavett in 1968 received an offer to host his own program on ABC. Beginning as an interview show titled This Morning, it was soon renamed The Dick Cavett Show and moved to prime time, before landing in a late-night slot in December of 1969, where it directly competed with Carson and The Tonight Show. Despite the two shows' apparent similar formats, Cavett soon distinguished himself from his NBC counterpart. Though The Dick Cavett Show and The Tonight Show often featured many of the same big-name guests, Cavett eschewed the gag-laden style of his forerunner for a more relaxed, conversational tone. He also proved willing to go further out on a limb with his subject matter, at times bringing on controversial guests and addressing more difficult issues. While Cavett and Carson shared many of the same guests, Cavett was receptive to rock and roll artists to a degree unusual at the time, as well as to authors, politicians, and other personalities outside of the entertainment field. The wide variety of guests, combined with Cavett's literate and intelligent approach to comedy, appealed to a significant enough number of viewers to keep the show running for several years, despite the competition from Carson's show. Carson's move to Southern California in the early 1970s to focus on Hollywood celebrities also helped to minimize guest overlap. Janis Joplin met Raquel Welch, The Dick Cavett Show, 1970.
Pushing and shoving and flashing and getting mad. That's all. That's the last dream. But before,
Yes.
no, I
How
mean...
can you put down
Really,
somebody that loves you?
you know what? I was mad at the time as they would not. I mean, they...
In the space of just over a year, Janis Joplin appeared on Cavett's show 3 times, always as the sole musician on the panel. She and Cavett, who had little in common, really look as if they enjoyed each other's company, when they're joined by other female guests, like Raquel Welch, with whom the musician also had little in common. Joplin seems eager to reach out and form a sisterly bond. In 1970, just after the opening of Myra Breckenridge, in which she plays a post-op transsexual, Raquel Welch met Janis Joplin on The Dick Cavett Show. Who but Dick Cavett would think up that combination? Miss Welch laughed at in a recent interview with The Observer. I happen to be a big, huge fan of Janis Joplin. She probably wouldn't have known that. I was gaga, and she was looking at me like I was from the moon. Welch made an appearance alongside Janis Joplin on The Dick Cavett Show in June of 1970, where the host points out that the people get surprised at how bright she is, adding, because everyone that is a sex symbol automatically has to be numb for some reason, and it hasn't turned out that way in your case. It's very nice of you to say so. "But I don't care about proving anything one way or another," she answered. The actor also discussed her film Myra Breckenridge, calling it a full-on smash. Welch said that she went to a party where film critics were present and asked for their opinion and told her they hated it and found it to be disgusting. Janice went on to interject and said that the film about a transgender woman who undergoes a sex change was too choppy, adding, "I couldn't understand it. It kept changing." "Yeah, well, it's about change," Welch quipped. There was even the surreal moment on the Dick Cavett Show shortly before she died when Janis Joplin tried to convince actress Raquel Welch, sitting there resplendent in her micro mini dress, that she should read Zelda. Raquel Welch, a Hollywood sex symbol known for her roles in movies like 1,000,000 Years BC, was a stark contrast to Janis Joplin, the raw and unapologetic rock and blues singer who was at the peak of her career. Despite their differences, there was a mutual respect and admiration between the two women.
Yeah, I mean, it's really ridiculous because I think that...
I get the same thing at concerts. The kids come up close, and they just want to dance.
Janis Joplin, who was known for her powerful, soulful voice and electrifying performances, was on the cusp of releasing her album, I Got Dem Old Cosmic Blues Again, Mama, at a time when Raquel was continuing to break boundaries in Hollywood. Their brief interaction on Cavett Show was a fascinating blend of Hollywood's glamour meeting rock and roll authenticity, a perfect reflection of the era's diverse cultural landscape. The best celebrity interviews have the ability to show us how the stars are not like us at all, not only because of the entourages, wardrobes, and bank accounts, but because of the talent for which we revere them, and also how they're kind of just like us after all, sharing the same insecurities, fears, doubts, forgetfulness, confusion, etc. They are, that is to say, real human beings. Like no other interviewer on network television before or since, Dick Cavett could draw all of this out of his guests, both their creativity and vulnerability. What seemed like silly chit-chat was a disarming camouflage for incisive questions he let casually slip through the banter. They play off each other in a charming exchange that goes nearly as deep as her final interview with the Village Voice's Howard Smith 4 days before her death that October, but which captures Joplin's thoughtful, easygoing personality beautifully. Cavett later credited Joplin for sending so many other major rock stars his way after her first appearance on his show in 1968. The conversation stays friendly and positive, and you almost don't want it to end. For an interview, this one lacks juicy secrets, but makes up for it in the playful banter between guest and host. Janis Joplin and Raquel Welch's influence. Janis Joplin, a force of nature in the rock music scene, transcended the expectations placed on female performers of her time. With a voice that can convey the deepest sorrows and the highest joys, Joplin's live performances were transformative experiences for her audiences. Janis Joplin is an icon, and rightly so, a female who commanded the stage with her confidence, sexuality, and growl at a time when rock was still an all-boys club. She broke rules and set a new course for music and the women who would follow in her tracks. Janis Joplin's life came to an abrupt end in 1970 when she overdosed on heroin at the age of just 27 years old. But her story still resonates, maybe even more so today, says author Holly George Warren. A woman who pushed the boundaries of gender and sexuality long before it was acceptable, Joplin was both a rebel and a perfectionist. Like Janis Joplin, Ms. Welch is an immediate signifier of a certain movement in America's cultural history. Consider, for instance, the appearance of her toned, bikini-clad figure on the cover of Time magazine in 1969. A 1979 Playboy cover dubbed her the decade's most desired woman. Presenting an Oscar in 1970, Miss Welch notoriously quipped, "I'm here for visual effects, and I have 2 of them." If Ms. Joplin exemplifies the post-war American masculine woman, chugging Southern comfort and gnarling her hair, Ms. Welch was the picture of robust, confident femininity. In her many roles, she was always more man-eater than wilting flower. As such, Ms. Welch sees herself as a figure of liberation, albeit of an unusual sort. Whatever my film work was, it was a departure from the sex symbol previously, who was blonde and more docile than the characters I portrayed as a sex symbol, she said. I think it was a different role for women. Women watch other women, and they are affected by that. She seemed proud to have been cited for the feminist cultural critic Camille Paglia, who said in 1995 interview with Playboy, "I love an actress as sensual as Raquel Welch. She is the type of woman who is a great queen of Hollywood. She has the lush sexuality that I admire." Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this look into Janis Joplin and Raquel Welch's legendary meeting, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more iconic stories. And don't forget to check out her other videos. You don't want to miss them.